Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Butternomics. I'm your host, Brandon Butler, founder and CEO of Butter ATL. And today, we've got the one, the only, Mr. You gotta say the Mr. Gotta add that part. Mr. Daniel Dickey. How you doing, sir?
I'm a grateful soul, King. How about you?
Man, you know what? If I was any better, I'd be you, bro.
I love that for us.
If I was any better, I'd be you. No, man, I'm good, man. I'm glad we get a chance to get you up in. We don't often have, the Renaissance man or anybody Renaissance, nobody, I don't know anybody else that is Renaissance anything. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have the Renaissance man in here often, so I appreciate you, sir.
Mm-hmm. I'm grateful to be here.
So, look, man, we've been doing something a little bit different here, okay? Like, normally I ask people to say, not everybody knows who you are. And we'll get to that point in just a second. We'll get to that point in just a second. But what we've been doing is I asked ChatGPT who you were.
Oh, yes.
I asked ChatGPT, I said, ChatGPT, who is Mr. Daniel Dickey in Atlanta, Georgia? That's all I asked it. So I'm going to read you what ChatGPT said. Okay?
Super intriguing.
All right.
Let's go.
All right. And what I want you to tell me is, did it leave anything out? Anything you want to add?
I'm sure they'll never cover everything.
We're going to see how close this is, okay? Mr. Daniel Dickey, often referred to as the Renaissance Man, is a prominent figure in Atlanta, Georgia. He is the founder and lead strategist at the Resource Guild, an award-winning 360 brand management strategy and consulting company. Through his agency, Daniel has collaborated with major brands such as Ferrari, Maserati, Lincoln, Moet Hennessy, the NBA, the NFL, Miller Coors, and Disney. Additionally, he has worked alongside some notable figures, including Mary, LeBron James, Amari Stoudemire, T.I., Young Jeezy, Usher, and more. Beyond his professional endeavors, Daniel is recognized for his community involvement and activism. He describes himself as a humanity activist and a lovable servant leader, emphasizing his commitment to positive social impact. His multifaceted talents also include singing and songwriting, reflecting his passion for the arts. Daniel's influence in Atlanta has earned him the nicknames such as the Governor of Atlanta, the Heartbeat of Atlanta, and highlighting his authentic and gracious engagement across diverse communities. His dedication to both professional excellence and community service underscores his significant role in the cultural and business of the city landscape of Atlanta. So you tell me. That's what ChatGPT said about you.
Wow, okay, ChatGPT, it sounds like you're mildly versed.
Now, fill in the gaps. Who is Mr. Daniel Dickey, the Renaissance Man? We got a little bit from there, but we're going to hear it from the source himself.
Okay, well, I first of all just appreciate ChatGPT being so, tapped in.
Mm-hmm, yeah, it knows, you know what I'm saying?
I think beyond that, I think that I am really just a person who figured out how to get paid to be himself.
Yeah.
And really what it meant to balance my energies. And it puts me in a space where really opportunities really flow to me in lots of different industries and in lots of different things that I do with my time and space in life, outside of the things that ChatGPT, covered. I specifically mentor young black men through the Barack Obama Foundation and the Fulton County Youth Commission. I'm the chairman of the Young Professional Advisory Board for Hosea Feed the Hungry and Homeless. I am a legacy kid. I am named after my two grandfathers. And so my dad's dad was one of the very first black doctors in Wilmington, North Carolina. Okay. He was the co-plaintiff in the civil rights litigation that integrated the hospitals in Wilmington, North Carolina. He was a co-plaintiff in the civil rights litigation that integrated the school system in Wilmington, North Carolina. He was one of the black doctors who funded Althea Gibson's tennis career. And then he was also my doctor. So on my birth certificate, I see Daniel for me, and then I also see Daniel for my doctor, who was my grandfather.
Yeah.
And so that was my dad's dad. So I got Daniel from him. And then my middle name comes from my mom's dad, who was the second longest tenured reverend in the entire history of the First Missionary Baptist Church.
Okay.
At the point that he died, he had been preaching for over 80 years. He's honorary doctorates, letters from several presidents. He won the highest honor you can win as a civilian in the state of North Carolina. And so really what I am is really a person who really stands on the legacy of two black men who both have their names on buildings. So as extraordinary as I may or may not be to anyone, it won't be anything to me until my name's on a building, because that's the mark for my family. And I do believe that every generation is supposed to go higher and further than the last. I am a basketball player and lover. I'm a tennis player and lover. I'm a soccer player and lover. I'm a lady fan and lover. And I'm just outside with the vibes, just in all the ways and on all of the days. That's who I am.
Look, man, I had no idea about the deep history
Mm-hmm.
of the family and kind of, where you come from. Like, what was it like just growing up around, so many influential, amazing people that were also, directly in your family like that?
I think it was something that really it was really always just like a teaching, a lesson that was always being learned, because one of the lessons that I learned very early on was about favor
Hmm.
and the value of your name, because as a youngster, when people would know who my father was, who my grandfather was, my mom, my dad, there was always another level of respect that then would be added.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you Glenn's son? Oh, and then and now it's like, oh, well, let me. And so it really taught me the value of your name and how important it is to what that means to the legacy of not just you, but to your family as a collective. So I'm from a family of singers, preachers, civil rights activists, doctors, and so really excellence, education, all those things were absolutely ingrained into us. I'm from North Carolina, but I don't speak with any type of Southern drawl, and so because my parents actually met in college,
Yeah.
and so it was that too. So it was really it was cool. Like, we did all the things. I sang in the choir. I played on the teams and all those things. And, I still found a way to figure out how to be this person that I am in the midst of all the things that are going on in my family.
Absolutely. What brought you to Atlanta for the first time?
My first time coming to Atlanta, my first time coming to Atlanta was as a kid.
Okay.
Yeah. So we took my parents, we took a family trip down to Atlanta. This was back when apparently it was cool for us to wear those t-shirt hoodies.
Yeah.
That had the little weed sign and all kinds of stuff on them. Apparently those worked for yes. And so I still remember my first trip to Atlanta as a youngster, because we went to the underground, and it was the first time I seen dudes with finger waves in their hair. And I was just like, hey, Mom, this style that girls wear. And it was so that was but that was my first time as a kid to Atlanta. My first time as a young adult was I came down here for an internship during undergrad at a PR firm called Images USA.
Yeah.
So I came down for an internship at Images. One of my homeboys is DJ Shakim. Shout out to DJ Shakim. And at that point, he was a DJ for Bow Wow and all kinds of people, and now he's the official DJ for New Edition.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he's lit, dope. And so I had boots on the ground. I was plugged, and I came for the internship, and then I officially moved to Atlanta in 2007.
Okay.
And I really moved here because I just needed more latitude and longitude. Growing up, in a smaller city where your family has, some prominence and all that kind of stuff like that, it puts the ceiling too close. And I knew I needed a bit more latitude and longitude to be all that I am.
Yeah, and in between 2007 and when did you start the Resource Guild?
2013.
Okay, so between 2000, we'll get into the Resource Guild and what that is, but like between 2007 and what were you doing then?
I was doing some financial counseling at a nonprofit here called Cares Community Housing through the FCS umbrella, and I was working at the Garner Circle.
Okay,
that was my first.
Shout out Nicole.
Yes, exactly. Definitely shout out to Dr.
Nicole.
Yeah,
Garner.
please,
You got to put a doctor on.
Please, Dr. Nicole Garner Scott. And so me and one of my great friends, Tierra Brooks, we went to, we met some girls at Slice. You remember Slice? Yeah. So we met some girls at Slice. They invited us to this party, and we got to this party and I had the soft skill finesse, security to get in, and it just ended up being most of the littest people in Atlanta at that time. I'm talking about everyone from Andre 3000 to Big Boy to Chingy, Ludacris, Monica, Bobby Valentino, Jazzy Faye, Shaka Zulu, Keenan Johnson, all the record label execs, the media, and they were just all at this one event. And so I'm a person who walks in a ancestral favor, if I'm being honest. I understand that I didn't earn all the favor that I walk in. But because we were in that room, and it's still today, and I produced some of the flyest events in the city, but that was I can count on my hand how many times I've been to an event where the absolute bar was set. And it was just all of this one event. And so I'm a person who walks in a ancestral favor, if I'm being honest. I understand that I didn't earn all the favor that I walk in. But because we were in that room, and it was still today, and I produced some of the flyest events in the city, but that was one of the I can count on my hand how many times I've been to an event where the absolute bar was open.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, of course, I mean, we did an event last night. Shout out to Remy. It was, complimentary Remy, not
Yeah.
anything you see on the bar. And so we were at this event, bro, and it was probably about 50, 60 people, but they were all the ones from local government at that point and all that. And so I networked the shit out of that room, bro. I left that room with probably 30 contacts, but they just happened to be really, really the people who really moved the city forward. And at this point now, they've been great friends for that long. I worked at the Garner Circle. I was the sports and lifestyle director, and then I ended up rising to being the executive vice president of the Garner Circle at the point where they became one of the top 5 Black-owned PR firms in the country.
Yeah.
And so, so I did that. That was my first industry job here in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that's where I first met you at. Now that I think back about it, like, because I've gone back with Dr. Nicole Garner
Right,
for
exactly.
a long time.
Obviously.
We've gone back, and I remember when y'all had the spot down there on Auburn Avenue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's when we first kind of connected, just in general. You know what I mean? But we've known each other for a long time too. And so no, man. See, that's why y'all gotta be good at people in Atlanta. You know what I mean? Like, you never know who's gonna end up where. You never know who's gonna be around. And again, it's people you meet all of a sudden. A couple years later, you know, they out here running everything like you.
Yeah.
So one of the things you said I want to kind of go back into, you said, you figured out how to get paid to be yourself. Like, that's a very powerful statement in within itself. Like, what does that actually mean to you, though?
Well, I think, honestly, like, I figured out really who I was, honestly, at 12.
Okay.
Yeah, at 12 years old, I was making lots of decisions about what I was up to, what I was interested in, what I wasn't interested in, what I liked, what I didn't like, and then what I was willing to do to express those things to, in life and also to people. And so at 12, I started my first business. And honestly, what I did at 12, I'm still doing now. You know what I mean? And so at 12, I started a lawn care business in my neighborhood. I was using my dad's lawnmower, and I would go out and secure, the deals to cut the yards. And honestly, I had like a 55-year-old white man who was actually my employee cutting the grass for me at 12. And he was a wino-y kind of guy. It was something I watched my dad do. He'd have his own boys. Yeah, exactly. And so I would negotiate the deals. I had the lawnmower. I would get the gas, and he would actually like cut the grass. And I made 60% of the money from that as a 12-year-old. And so going in, identifying the needs, securing the deal, and then working through my own abilities and staff abilities, and then the abilities of all these amazing people in this city and then all over the country. And that's literally what I'm still doing now. You know what I mean? And so there was that. At 12, I was playing baseball and basketball and soccer. I was a artist, a visual artist that was featured at the state level. Excuse me. I was a visual artist that was featured at the state level in in North Carolina, and all those things I was doing at 12.
I always say that people that kind of have clarity about what they want to do early are some of the luckiest people because you get to spend more time doing it. And that's something, even with my kids, I kind of try to push them. It's like, look, I'm all about exploration and figuring stuff out. I know everybody's path is different, but I do believe that, again, the people that figure out or know what they want to do or know the direction they want to go in at an early age are just, there's lucky because you literally get to spend your entire life like focusing on that thing. And that's where real mastery comes in at. Yeah,
definitely. And so for me, in that same space, I was, the Sultan of Mischief. I was a mischievous kid, definitely.
Not the Sultan.
Yeah, Sultan of Mischief, obviously. And so, Sultan of Mischief, I was definitely the kid who was doing my work faster than everyone else in class and then throwing spitballs at them and I had all that kind of stuff going on. I was getting suspended from school for disrupting the class and all those different kinds of things. I was doing all those things at that time. But what I realized as I look back now is my teachers would tell my parents and my friends' parents that it's with my friends' parents, they're like, listen, your kid is really not the problem in class. It's really this kid named Daniel Dickey, but Daniel has an A in the class. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was definitely that kid. I've always been a person who people are attracted to my energy. You know what I mean? Like, people just feel really comfortable around me. They feel powerful around me. And that's been a thing too. And so really, that's really something I've just been able to really figure out how to monetize, honestly. Like connectivity, the ability to, connect dots. the ability to move things forward, and the ability to really see things toggling between my left brain and my right brain.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's talk about this. Like when it comes to monetization, I think a lot of people, again, they kind of struggle to figure out like where the value is. Like, how did you start learning, and how did you kind of figure out, especially with the resource guild, as you kind of get into that, like to actually, because look, you got to eat.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
Georgia Power don't take likes
No, they
on
really
social
don't.
media. You know
No,
what I'm
they
saying?
really
So
don't.
like, how do you think about actually, putting a dollar figure on the values and the services that you create and provide for people?
Well, I think working in PR was really working at the Garner Circle was really like it was really like a teaching module for me on just the needs of people, especially like in these industries. And so working in PR, you really kind of put the light on and keep the lights on your clients and keep the lights on whatever their endeavors are. But when I started the Resource Guild, it was I felt stifled and I felt confined by being considered a publicist. And so I just felt like, just as this person who is apparently one of the most diversely accomplished Black men in the world, I felt like being called a publicist was just such a minute piece of who I actually am. And so when I started the Resource Guild as one of the only 360-degree brand management and strategy consulting agencies, it was understanding that our people have more needs than light being on them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so instead of creating a press conference for you, let's paint this place. You know what I mean? Like, let's actually get this ratchet girl from your front desk. Let's redo your website. Let's redo your logo. Let's reformat your packaging. Let's do things that don't have anything to do with PR. So then when it is time to execute the PR deliverable, you're in a better space as a company, from the way you look, feel, execute. And so really that's kind of how, that kind of happened. Like, I'm just a person who, at this point, I have 22,000 contacts on my phone.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I got 22,000 unread emails, but I don't have 20,000 contacts.
Yes, and so I have 22,000 contacts on my phone. So there's literally nothing under the sun that I can't call someone to get figured out. And so just that's immensely valuable, to huge brands and to small businesses.
What advice would you give the people that, because one thing that's interesting about Atlanta and a lot of Black-owned businesses, a lot of times they are service-based in my experience, and people, again, they do their versions of agencies, or again, whether it's PR or creative, but like again, when it comes to actually figuring out like the quote-unquote formula, like you got to, like, how do you approach actually having the money conversation with people?
Well, first for me, like, just I guess like my like intake components. First, start off with me sending over an overview of my agency and my bio. Because that's important for them to know who I am, because I never want to be in a situation where we're on a call or anything. And I, of course, have a lot of energy, and I'm bold, I'm fearless. I say what I mean what I say. I'm quick and clean. And so I never needed to be, who does this guy think he is? Yeah. So let's go ahead and get past the who does this guy think he is, so we can get to what's going on. And so I won't even meet with you if you haven't went through that. So you do that, you do a new client questionnaire, and then we set up a call. And on that call, it's essentially a brand development consultation, because all I speak is drip, sauce, growth. So it's like, even on that call, we're going to talk about how things that you can do will assess your business's digital footprint, your products, what you have going on, and then we'll talk about things that you can do to be more poppin'. And so you can do those things yourself, or you can pay us to execute those things. But that's how you leave that. And then if we decide that, both decide that there's interest in working together, because I'm not a person who has I don't really operate from a financial model in general. Like, I get paid to be me, so that's all I ever have to be. And so I'm not one of those people who's money driven in any really shape, form, or fashion. I'm a minimalist. I keep things very simple. But if we decide that we want to actually explore what it might mean to work together from a retainers base, then I'll send over a proposal, and it's got the prices in it. And if the word thousand in some shape, form, or fashion wasn't involved, then there's no way we were involved. Like, unless you were like a pro bono, like I do. Like, so one of our agency's pro bono partners right now is the Clayton County magnet schools and school system. And then one of our other nonprofit pro bono type clients is the Be Aware Foundation and Affirmations across Atlanta. So I have a couple of clients that we work through that space. But for everybody else, it's, again, bow wow. Bow wow energy.
As a business owner and entrepreneur, I mean, again, run the resource guild, all the other things you do, and obviously it takes a lot of balance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are some of the biggest just lessons you've learned about actually running a business? Now that you actually own your own thing. Again, we know you get paid to be yourself, but
Right,
you
right.
also do have a company. You have people
Absolutely.
that work for you. Like,
Yeah.
just as from that standpoint, like, what are some of the biggest lessons that you learned from a business ownership standpoint?
Well, I think a couple of the lessons for me are one is I think it's honestly easier nowadays in the agency space to work with independent contractors more than full-time employees. It just works better with this everyone wants to be their own boss energy that people bring in the first place. So it's like, okay, you want to be your own boss? You are. However, you know what I mean? If you're working with the Resource Guild, this is our client. And so now you have two clients because you have the Resource Guild as your client and then whatever the account is that I brought you in to work on. So that's definitely one because, again, it's just, you want to be your own boss. And I think that space is very problematic, I think, in our culture specifically because all these solopreneurs and, gigpreneurs and stuff like that. And I think your business isn't really viably contributing to our culture if you're not employing people, in some shape, form, or fashion. I learned that, at this point, we're probably in we're in one of the most selfish times in the world. So having employees is also, something that goes up and down as how much you like it or not. Like I'm appreciating how ChatGPT and those mechanisms are helping not have to go back and forth with these niggas. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like, people are really, I think we're in the most selfish time in the world. And I think we're also in a time where people aren't really committed to anything. They aren't committed to their families. They aren't committed to their dreams, their destinies, their purpose, their passion, their work. So people aren't committed to anything. And I also think people are not authentically pursuing greatness. I think nowadays people would rather call themselves the great, put it on the end or put a GOAT hashtag or something on, in their bio, and they'll still want you to treat them like they earned that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so another thing that I learned is that if the receipts aren't there, then they aren't. And it doesn't matter how dope they feel like they are. At this point, like it's faith without work is dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so is the work saying that you're the GOAT in any shape, form, or fashion? Are you the GOAT even of your neighborhood? Are you the GOAT of your family? Are you the GOAT of whatever town? And you're not. You know what I mean? So I'm learning that people are not that dope. You know what I mean? I learned that follow-up is absolutely a missing piece for a lot of people that follow through. It's like, yeah, you can get a shot up, but did you flick your wrist?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the wrists aren't getting flicked. And it's just a lot of mediocrity masquerading as masters at this point. So learn that. I learned that it's really important to keep your expenses very low as an entrepreneur, just in general. Like, you know what I mean? Because you just never know what this month is going to look like. You know what I mean? Like I have a month where our agency may bring in $15,000, but then I might have a month where our agency might make $2,000. You know what I mean? And you still got to manage the ebb and flow of that and make sure that the people that, you promised to pay, get paid. I learned that really there's a part of it for me because my agency is set up really interestingly, because we don't do any solicitation of business. Like we don't do RFPs, we don't do advertising. And so I learned that you could have a sustainable business in that way if you are tapped into who you actually are and your frequency and how your vibrations incite your blessings to be attracted to you. I learned that as well because I could, as a consultant, I would never tell someone to do business the way I do. You know what I mean? Like, if you build it, they will come. No,
not necessarily.
No, very much not necessarily. But, again, that's, I live on a very different frequency from most humans, and I do understand that. And that's why when people ask me how I'm doing, I will usually speak to me being grateful at the top of that conversation.
Yeah. Atlanta's a very interesting place specifically. I mean, even when you talk about just the way that people approach things, I say this a lot to people. I think that, Atlanta has such a entrepreneurial and hustle culture, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a lot of people, to your point, haven't necessarily done the work or don't actually know how to do the work. And so, like, hustle can only get you so far.
Yeah. And I knew I never was trying to hustle.
Right. Like, what I mean? Like, at a certain point, you're just kind of guessing what to do. And I think what people like downplay, even if you've had a time in corporate background, or like to your point, even if you worked for somebody else, you have to learn how to work.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that's really missing right now in this
Absolutely.
kind of like entrepreneurial, solopreneur culture is a lot of people have kind of skipped over that step of learning how to work. And it's like basic stuff, to your point. It's follow-ups. It's like how to run a meeting, how to write a proposal. Like,
literally.
Yeah, I mean, great. It's great that chat and all these things can help out, but like you need that experience. And I think it really shows, and I think that's where a lot of the quote-unquote mediocrity starts to come from.
Yeah.
They're making this shit up as they go along.
Literally. and then also oversight.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like in this space, like people, it's like, even sometimes with my contractors, it's like, yes, you drafted this press release. Yes, you drafted this, social media caption. But at the end of the day, when people hire the Resource Guild, they want their campaign to be touched by Mr. Daniel Dickey. So I'm going to absolutely need to look at this thing and make sure it falls into alignment with the agency standards that have been set out for almost 13 years now. You know what I mean? And so you get that kind of stuff. It's like people don't even want to answer to anyone. Yeah. And it's like somebody's got to write you a check. You know what I mean? And that's for everyone. It's like even when people talk about being self-made, I think that is the biggest cap of a statement that you could ever make, because at no point could you ever be self-made. Like, I'm a very literal person. So to me, self-made is like, hello, you didn't go into your mom's womb and pick your features. You didn't decide you was going to be a baddie. You didn't decide you were going to have this widow's peak. So you weren't self-made. You were conceived by, two hopefully attractive people who had sex and then made you. So you didn't make yourself there. And then as you're going through your career and you're matriculating, people had to invest things into you. Yeah. They had to invest, knowledge, wisdom, insight, gems, all those things. Those things are obviously a part of your propulsion to wherever you end up going. And then if you can't print your own money and take it to banks and negotiate it, or take it to vendors and negotiate it, and the feds not be on you for, you know what I mean? Then you weren't self-made. Like, somebody had to invest in you. You know what I mean? And it's very problematic when I hear people say that they were self-made, because if you didn't print your own money, a bunch of people had to come together for you to be made.
Yeah, it's like it was funny. Even to your point about like the whole GOAT thing. Like my boy Ray Daniels, I saw him talk about something lately because somebody asked him like, should you, if you're an artist in a city, you're a creative, and you want a bigger platform, should you go to a bigger place to kind of get it going? He was like, well, if you're not the biggest person in your city,
town,
if you're not the biggest person in Statesboro, Georgia.
Exactly.
If you're not the biggest artist in Macon,
exactly.
What the hell you go to New York for?
Exactly. Shout out to Ray Daniels, my Virgo king and brother, and then shout out to Macon. Yeah. But that's absolutely a fact. And it's like it's this delusional aspect of our culture to me that I think is very, very problematic, because at the end of the day, my guy, you're 5'2", with very limited motor skills. I don't give a fuck what anybody told you. You're not going to the NBA. Like, that's not on your list of things. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like you really got to be able to tap into who you are, really, and then tap into what you can do, and then always be getting your skills up. You know what I mean? Like, you're never going to be so dope that you can't get your skills up. Yeah,
one of my favorite quotes actually comes from 50 Cent. He says that, the firmer your grip is on reality, the more you can adjust it to your needs.
Exactly.
And I 100% think a lot of people just aren't in reality. And you're not being honest with yourself. Like, it's one thing to lie to everybody else. When you start lying, now, I'm all about confidence.
Yeah, definitely.
But, like,
and confidence.
But again, you can't lie to yourself. You got to be honest about the reality of the situation.
Right.
And because, if you're not, like, man, it's not going to go well for
right.
you.
Exactly.
Now, you talk about, I think you call it the Kim principle. Keep it moving. Like, how does that show up in your business and your life and what you do?
The Kim principle, honestly, for me, is like a ruling center. And it's my belief that if you're able to keep it moving forward positively and productively, no matter what comes your way in life, good things will always be on their way to you. I think it's one of the ways that you have a element of control, because you get to curate your own karma. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's like you do reap what you sow inevitably. And so the Kim principle for me is how I handle problems. And because that's the way I handle problems, it puts my clients at ease. It puts my friends, it puts my family at ease. They know that I'm thinking about what's going on in a way that's productive and positive, no matter what it is, whether it's scandal or anything. I'm still thinking about how do we positively and productively navigate it. And it's really just the way that I live my life through all things. I remember 2023. That year, I decided that that was the year I was going to start actually having just a mindset around adding that M the millionaire M to all the other M's that I am.
Yeah.
Multimedia mogul, minimalist, musician, mastermind. And apparently God decided that I needed new things.
I'm gonna start saying that.
Yes.
No.
And so it was my birthday, September, and I was like, should I get a new car? And I didn't get a new car. And literally later on in that month, all the electronics on my car crashed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So obviously I had to get a new car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it was like, this is going to cost $4,000 to fix. And so that decision was made for me. In that same year, I was at Rocksteady, shout out to Rocksteady, and someone broke into my car. Mm-hmm. And they stole all my bags. So they stole my laptop bag. They stole my sports bag, with the sneakers and the tennis rackets and the knee braces and ankle braces. They stole that bag. They stole my ganja bag with all my, the things necessary to get on a flight.
Now you're going too far.
Yeah, I'm talking about they took all my bags. So that year, obviously, again, like I said, I obviously needed to do a lot of new things. But I sat outside of the Rocksteady and, for, probably 2 hours waiting on the police to show up. And when I got there, the cop was like, "You're unusually calm. Like, people are usually frantic and, very angry and all those kinds of things around, their things being stolen. But I wasn't put here to connect the things. You know what I mean? Like I'm here to be a guide, to be a sage, and to help people get closer to their dreams and destiny. And so nothing in that bag was going to prevent me from doing what I was put on this earth to do. And I wasn't physically harmed in any shape, form, or fashion. And I don't really give a fuck about stuff. You know what I mean? So, but he was just like, "You're unusually calm," but it's always the Kim principle for me. And the times that I really have to practice the Kim principle are when trials and tribulations come. It's easy to be positive and productive when things are in flow, but is it equally as easy to be positive and productive when things are hitting the fan, whether that's personally or professionally? And I've found a way to kind of be close to that through all the things, and it just brings a confidence to the people around me and an assurance to people around me, and it's actually a part of why my reputation allows my business to work with some of the most extraordinary brands and people in our time and era.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, working with those brands, I'm sure can be demanding. I'm sure that there are very interesting people to work with out here, all these different levels. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of balance authenticity and staying honest and kind of true to what is important to you, as well as the needs of these brands and companies and celebrities that you work with?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, for me, because I didn't go looking for them. So, you know what I mean? So I think that's a part of it on the front side. Like, because we don't solicit business, you found me somehow. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it was, and so you came to me somehow. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't even know who the people are who refer me. Yeah. People are like, "Oh, I was referred by," and I was like, "Who?" But yeah, like, who was that? You said
it's 22,000 people in here.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, you know what I mean? And so, so for me, it's like, so I think when brands and stuff come to me, they understand that they're coming to me. And I'm a leader of leaders, and have a way that I see things that comes from being this Renaissance man that has all these perspectives. So I have a perspective that has a weight to it that people are really comfortable with, at high levels. Like C-suite people love humans like me, CEOs love humans like me, and dynamic people enjoy being around this energy. And so for me, to go back to your question, it's the balance comes from being in balance on the front side. I think as Black men, one of the things that we aren't doing really well is having any dominion over our feminine energy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so because I do have that balance, I understand what it means to be able to toggle between the masculine energy that's dominant, but also the feminine energy that's so necessary to your soft skills, to being a nurturer, to being a developer. And so because I come with balance, it allows men not to feel overly, intimidated by that part of me, and so that it also makes women feel very confident in the masculine part. You know what I mean? So I get to speak from that balanced perspective on all things. It's almost like Yoda Miyagi type energy. You know what I mean? And so it just makes that part easy. Yeah, honestly.
My old, I had a mentor used to talk about, it's always a balance between kind of being, Yoda and Superman with a lot of things. You got to kind of know there are different moments to do both. But You were talking. It also reminded me of something. And I actually even asked ChatGPT because I wanted to ask you.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, you know what? What's a Renaissance man?
Yeah.
Because you use that term, and
Yeah.
for those that don't know, I think people have heard it.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know if they've ever like thought to define what it is. And so
Okay.
I kind of asked, and it said, it's somebody that's multifaceted. They're curious, creative, intellectually versatile,
Mm-hmm.
culturally fluent. Like, when did you start defining yourself and referring to yourself as a Renaissance man? Like, what made you start doing that?
So I think honestly, it's when I put together my bio to launch the Resource Guild.
Okay.
It was because for me, it was like all throughout that process before that, when I was working in PR, it was, that was something that really dominated a lot of my time and space. But I'm so many other things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I am versed in lots of different things and subject matters and things. And so it really just kind of put me in the space where I just kind of looked back and just understood that, yes, I've done all these things. You know what I mean? And I said it previously where I felt like I was kind of confined in the PR space, a publicist, you know what I mean? And I knew that I felt like that just didn't even scratch the surface of who I am or what I could do. And so then when I look back over all the things that I've done, I've coached professional basketball players, all those different kinds of things. And none of those things have anything to do with what the agency does.
Right.
You know what I mean? But then also, but to even go beyond that, I talked to a lot of students. I've been a mentor and guided boys to men. Since I was probably about 16 years old, I've been a part of helping boys become men. And understanding that for men specifically, we define ourselves a lot, and just actually now in this culture, more times than not, people define themselves based on what they do to make money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you ask them, hey, so what do you do? And they'll tell you their trade.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a carpenter, I'm a lawyer, I'm a therapist. But that may or may not be why you were put on this earth.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then for being someone who comes from the legacy that I come from, I understand very deeply that we derive from the people who created every fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Like, if it's dope and it exists, Black people had a hand in it, from all the way from the establishing of civilization to where we are now. And so when people define themselves based on what they do for a living, it causes them to have anxiety around any other thing that they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, yeah, my guy, yes, you work at the Postal Service, that's how you take care of your family, but you love to paint. You actually, really love to be a saxophone player, and that was something you really wanted to do. And so if you don't carve out space to be all that you are in this life, you'll be so much less than you are, and you'll die, and you'll really still be full. And so I want people to get closer to empty at the ends of their lives, and you'll never do that if you don't create space for all that you are. And so when people ask me what I do, I start with the fact that I'm a Renaissance man. I don't start with a trade. I don't start with any of those things, because I want to give you something bigger, because I am bigger. And then we could decrescendo. We can decrescendo it into, you heard I was a publicist or whatever that was. But I'm not going to start there, because that's not who I am. I'm a Renaissance man. I'm somebody who's versed and capable in lots of different ways and lots of different things. It's like I'm a singer. I'm a activist. I'm a soccer player. I'm a basketball player. I'm a tennis player. I'm a multimedia mogul. But I also, love dancing with somebody's daughter. You know what I mean? I smoke marijuana. All of these different things, all of those things are who we are. And I think if we can get our people into understanding that, really, I think our one and only true responsibility in life is to be all that we are. And so I start with a broad stroke so we can bring it in, because I want to enhance the way other people look at themselves.
Absolutely. They always say like life is a stage, and I know you know that too, especially because I was surprised. I didn't know you were a vocalist at first. And I remember when I found out, I've seen you out there doing your thing before, and like I said, they say life is a stage, but like, what's the next act for you? What are you excited about next?
So honestly, interesting that you brought it up in that way. So for me, it's, I've been a person who's kind of, worked side stage and stuff like that, putting people on stage and stuff like that. But honestly, for me, what's next is more of this. You know, like I've definitely kind of been almost like an enigmatic kind of person
Yeah.
for a long time. It's like sometimes people will come up to me and they'll be like exhausted trying to figure out who I am. Like, bro, I see you everywhere, bro. What you do, bro? And look, and then when people listen to, you know, my interviews, any podcasts, any features, you know, I've been on NBC and all these different things, but they really enjoy my perspective, like the way that I look at life. And it seems to be something that lands and is relatable across culture, across generations. So really for me, next is sharing more of me with the world. You know, sharing like, you know, from on the music side, being my cousin said that I'm not a motivational speaker. He says I'm a directional speaker. So yes, because I give people, I guess, direction. You know what I mean? I guess that is what I do. But a part of what I'm seeing now, Brandon, is I'm seeing myself, you know, on the marquee at State Farm Arena or at Madison Square Garden, and I'm there as a motivational directional speaker and a recording artist. So just imagine you're going to see Les Brown or Tony Robbins mixed with seeing Stevie Wonder, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so that kind of energy. So, you know, the music being a part of, you know, creating conversations about love, about greatness, about, you know, forgiveness, about healing, about all those things. So so sharing more of me with the world is a part of what I think the next phase is for me. That's kind of been the one that I've kind of kept in the crock pot of it all, you know? And so I guess I'm in a space now where I'm, you know, super duper whooper connected, you know, people really, really, you know, there's a lot of love outside in these streets for Mr. Daniel Dickey, and just kind of harvesting that in a way that gets to move our people forward. I think, you know, we're seeing a lot of our legends, our legendary black male voices specifically, you know, die, have unceremonious falls from grace. But, you know, if our black men are going to be what they see, they need to see more of black men like me and you, so they can have better compasses and better North Stars to take them to where they need to be going. I think that, you know, the frequency around a lot of things right now is pretty low. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I think even when we look at what it means to achieve, and nowadays, you know, people, they feel like they're the greatest of all time because they, you know, dug in their nose and rubbed it on their teacher.
Because they mama told them.
Right, exactly. They went viral. And
Yeah.
so now it's like, you know, and so now they're describing themselves, you know, on the red carpet, like, oh, I'm like, you know, me, because, you know, if you don't have an EGOT, who even are you?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, and they're like, oh, you know, I'm like, you know, who are you? They walk up like, you know, I'm such a big deal. And I'm like, well, who are you? And it's like, oh, I'm the guy who rubbed the booger on my teacher and went viral. Okay, well, step out the way, my guy.
Right.
But that's celebrity now. You know what I mean? Like, just, you know, the most, yes, like, it's so, and so it's important for us to take up more space. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really proud of you for this, and the things that you're doing, you know, to shine lights on more entities, more brands, more people, and then also this city, you know, because that's important. If our next generations are going to be what they see, they need to see folks like me and you who are sometimes, you know, more so going to lean into being low key and to the side, but that's not going to help our next generations be what they need to be. This culture, this country is specifically dumbing down the minds of black people. You know what I mean? Because if I can make people aspire to be a viral sensation for a dance, they'll never probably focus on knowledge and wisdom and learning and the things that'll be sustainable to any true greatness and excellence.
No, that's dope, man. So look, before we get out of here, one question I love to ask people is, you know, I'm going to ask you is, if there was a Mr. Daniel Dickey billboard in Atlanta, I'm sure there's probably been at another point, but again, like this billboard, you could put any message, anything you believe in, any mantra, your favorite book. What would be on the Mr. Daniel Dickey billboard that was in Atlanta somewhere?
What would be on the billboard? That's such a tough one. Oh, like probably a QR code. Like, too much to even go into. You know what the fuck going on.
That's the first time anybody's ever said that. You know
yes.
what?
I mean, maybe the Kim principle, like just, you know, that, like what, you know, the Kim principle and then a QR code. You know what I mean? Maybe. But I don't know. I've never thought about that. You know, like just, that's not been a thought of mine. So that was my knee-jerk reaction. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I could change it on the back end. Just scan this and I'll put whatever I feel like putting up there.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. You need this energy.
Right.
Mr. Daniel Dickey, you know, the Kim principle, you need this energy, you know, and then a QR code.
Hey, no, that's good. I like that one. I'm gonna start using it. Look, man, this has been an amazing conversation. Before we get out of here, please, how can people find out more about you? How can they follow? How can they get in contact with you? How can they find out about the Resource Guild? Like, give them all the things.
So I am very findable. I think if you type in Mr. Daniel Dickey on anything, you'll find me. My Instagram is at Mr. Daniel Dickey. The agency social is at Resource Guild. And that'll be pathways to anything that I have going on. You can absolutely find those things through Mr. Daniel Dickey or the Resource Guild, and at Resource Guild on socials.
Absolutely.
And so I want to say I appreciate you again for creating this platform, sharing it with me and sharing it with all the other dope and extraordinary people that have been on the platform. And I actually have a question for you.
What you got?
Yeah, and so exactly. I mean,
What you got?
Exactly.
Let's do it. What's up?
Exactly. And so my question is, what do you see for you in the next chapter of the ascension of Brandon Butler and the Butter brand?
Man, it's funny. I was actually kind of thinking about that on the way over here. 404 Day is coming up.
Right.
And I was actually thinking a lot about just what's happened over the last 7 years since I started Butter, and 5 years since we kind of have been doing 404 Day, right? Like, all this started from an Instagram account. And, I have a background in tech. I have a, MBA from Georgia Tech also. And I remember saying in the early days, they're like, I didn't start an Instagram I didn't go to get my MBA from tech just to run an Instagram account. So
Right.
I've always wanted to kind of be something bigger. For me in general, I've always wanted to make an impact on this city. I grew up out here. I wasn't born here, but I moved here when I was like 6 months old.
Okay.
And I remember growing up, I would always, every Sunday after I got my first car and I could drive, I would drive downtown. And I would just drive through the city and say, like, one day I'm going to be in those buildings. Like, one day I'm going to make an impact. And so it's hilarious now, like, now that we're doing this parade and shutting down P Street, the same time I would drive up and down and being like, one day I'm going to get in that building. Like,
Right.
I've been in all those buildings now. I've had meetings in those. I've talked to people. And so, for me, man, honestly, I just want this to, continue to kind of grow and be one of the cornerstone, platforms or things in Atlanta that's kind of like built authentically from the ground up. I think Atlanta's a very special place. I think that things are still possible here.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not perfect, obviously. But I just, again, I want to be one of the people that's making an impact on this city and saying, leaving a legacy. Like, I'm really proud to do a lot of the things I do, and for my kids to see me doing it also. Like, I think it really means a lot because I'm showing them what's possible. And so, like, I'm just very appreciative of all the support and all the people that I've had a chance. And I mean, obviously, I want to make money and do all those things too. But like I said, for me, really, I want to build things that, leave a legacy. I really believe that, again, if we're still doing 404 Day and a 404 Day parade and all these things 10 years from now, like, that's what matters, right? And I always wanted to be a person that created something that kind of, almost like outlived me in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that for you. Definitely. So then my last question. Look, on your show. So with all the high functioning things that you're up to, how do you maintain your balance and your mental health in the midst of that? Like, I just absolutely know that Black men aren't talking about that enough.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, look, man, balance is hard. Anybody that tells you that they are balanced, I think, isn't probably giving you the whole truth because especially when you're out here doing your own thing and just the ebbs and flows that come with that. A friend of mine gave me some advice a long time ago. He said a lot of this stuff is like a roller coaster.
It is.
You can't get too high. You just gotta kind of, or too low. You gotta find a way to kind of stay in
Exactly.
the middle. And we all have good days and bad days.
Sure.
But I think the thing that's helped me out the most is therapy. I have a therapist. I've been seeing her for the last almost 2.5, 3 years.
Okay.
And even funny, it was the other day, like, because I'm just balancing so many things right now. I
Right.
literally, we had an appointment. I wasn't going to get somewhere where I could be stationary, so I just pulled my car over,
Right.
and we just did it right there in the car,
Yeah.
right? But I think what people need to do is they need to remember you got to let the air out the balloon sometimes. And as much as we have our friends that we like to talk to about our problems and all that stuff, the thing I've learned more often than not is even if you tell your friends your problems, the typical advice you're going to get is, man, niggas be hating. And I'm like, man, yeah, they do, but like,
that's actually not the problem.
That's not the problem, And so I think, again, like, it's easy to just, and again, we need friends. And also, too, even when you're dealing about different stuff, whether it's relationships with people, I think you got to be very careful about what you say, about people to other people, especially when you're upset. And so you need a place, you need a place where you can let some of that air out the balloon. So for me, that's the first place I found balance. And then the other part is, I just try to take time. I mean, that's honestly something I'm still trying to get better at.
Yeah.
Is figuring out, like, I don't really have any hobbies.
Oh, really?
Like
Nothing?
I mean, like I used to play video games and stuff like that. But like,
you used to be a gamer.
I used to be a gamer.
Now you feel like you're too old?
I got too busy.
Oh,
But again,
okay.
what I'm trying to do right now is be a lot more intentional about hobbies and doing other things.
Uh-huh.
So I'm in the early stages of like learning how to play golf again, and just trying to do things. I think that's just again just being outside, being active. I used to play basketball and baseball growing up, but I do think that again, in general, therapy is really important.
Yeah.
Especially if you're high functioning, high performing. You got a lot of responsibilities on you. And I think I think you need to do things that aren't work related. For a long time, I would say like my hobby is work.
Yeah.
And that was a terrible thing to do.
Literally, the most terrible.
Yeah. So like you have to find other things. So that's something I'm honestly still working on and trying to get better at.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that helped me out is definitely just, having a space and a forum where I could, like I said, let some air out the balloon from time to time. Because if you hold it all in, I know for me personally, it would manifest physically.
Definitely.
Like my hair my hair would fall out at certain points. I mean, I would develop back spasms and stuff like that. And so that's your body talking to you.
Literally.
And when that happens, you got to listen. And so I would just advise, again, anybody that's, trying to, I mean, I think everybody needs it to a certain extent, but I would definitely say if you're really out there trying to do something, you need to find those places and forums to, like I say, let air out the balloon.
Absolutely.
Because you can't hold all this stuff in.
Absolutely. Like I'm a person who I have lots of hobbies. Like because I'm a very active human. Like so, the sports are definitely like. But then also I do yoga. I've actually been doing yoga for about 20 years. I love being outside, grounding, breathing, the affirmations, dancing with somebody's daughter specifically. That's a really great one. Obviously, dancing with somebody's daughter is obviously, also a gateway to perhaps other things with somebody's daughter that are also very healing. But yeah, like I appreciate you having that conversation because I don't think we're doing that enough as Black men. I think that one of the things we're just not doing is we're not talking.
Yeah.
We're not talking to each other. And it's only putting us further and further behind a lot of other groups of people.
Yeah. Well, look, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being the first guest to ask me a couple questions.
Somebody's got to do it.
On the pod. You know what I'm saying?
We love to see it.
This has been a great conversation. Thank you for pulling up, sir. And with that said, we out. That's the pod.